What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast. I am, of course, your host. Who does the most? Ethan Smith. Hope you guys are all having a phenomenal Halloween, October 31st, 2022. It is Monday. We are going to be wrapping up the 2022 player review series today, talking all about the outfield outlook for next season, as well as recapping what the outfield was able to do this year. Two guys that obviously stood out well more than others. Also, why the Pirates don't really need to go out of the organization just yet to find the answers they need for the outfield. Bryan Reynolds is also a finalist for the Silver Slugger Award, so we'll talk about that a little bit today on today's episode. Also, thank you for everybody who wished me a happy birthday yesterday. Of course, the Steelers didn't give me a great birthday gift, but thank you to everyone that definitely was a part of making my birthday very fun. I really appreciate it. Today's episode, of course, is brought to you by BetOnline. Talk a little bit more about them later. Thank you, of course, as always, for listening to this podcast when it does come out. You guys are the best audience that a guy could ask for, and I couldn't ask for a better audience from the Locked On Pirates faithful. With the offseason ramping up, hopefully pretty soon as we enter the month of November, we're going to be keeping a keen eye on a lot of what the Pirates might be doing this offseason, as well as some names that they could be interested in. But again, on today's episode, it's all about the outfield. We're going to talk about that today. And let's get into today's episode, everybody.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to that Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, everybody. I am, of course, your host who does the most, Ethan Smith. And the last time you guys saw me, of course, was last week when I talked about Key Brian Hayes. Go check that episode out from a few days. Well, it was more than a few days ago. It was last week. My birthday weekend kind of flooded all of my time. So sorry that the episodes did not come out for you. But this week, we also have a new work schedule that I am going to be on that is going to be more favorable for me to get these episodes out to you 5 days a week. And I'm all open for any ideas on anything about the Pittsburgh Pirates that you guys want to hear right now. So please submit those via Twitter at Locked On Pirates or at MVP_Ethan on what you would like to see me talk about on this podcast. We're going to have a mailbag Wednesday this week. We're going to have Gary Morgan on tomorrow. So we're going to be doing a bunch of that stuff, and it's going to be a very, very fun week here on the Locked On Pirates podcast. We're getting all into the outfield today, which the outfield of the Pittsburgh Pirates has had its issues for quite some time. Of course, Andrew McCutchen, Starling Marte, Gregory Polanco, that was a phenomenal group. Of course, Andrew McCutchen gets traded, then Polanco and Marte are left. They replaced McCutchen with Corey Dickerson. That was still a very good outfield where Corey Dickerson won a Gold Glove award. All of those guys obviously not here anymore. Starling Marte ends up getting traded. Gregory Polanco is eventually designated for assignment, and Corey Dickerson went on his own way. Now the Pirates, thankfully to the Andrew McCutchen trade, have a guy named Bryan Reynolds, who has been the pillar of this outfield for the last couple of seasons now. He has been the pillar of this team for the last couple of seasons now as its unquestioned best position player, I would say. And we did an episode a few weeks ago asking about the one big question surrounding Bryan Reynolds on if the Pirates should extend him or keep him. Obviously, they should extend him, in my opinion, because he's the kind of guy that you want on your baseball team. He's a phenomenal defensive outfielder. He's a phenomenal hitter as well. Of course, you didn't see it as much as you would have had in previous years, like last year when he was an all star, but he still came around later in the year and made things work. The big thing here with the outfield structure is you know that Bryan Reynolds is a guy that you can rely on in center field, which is a very good thing when you're a rebuilding team. You want to make sure that you have a guy in center field. Center field is one of the big spots on any baseball team where you want to make sure that you have that spot solidified with a guy like Bryan Reynolds, who, as mentioned, is going to give you, like he did this year, almost 30 home runs and as well a great glove out there in the outfield. Everywhere else is where questions start to kind of arise. And there was a lot of different players this year that actually played in the outfield. Nine. It appears that there was a lot. Brian, just by home runs, qualifications on home runs here for people that did play. Bryan Reynolds, of course, led all of the outfielders on the team in home runs with 27. Jack Sawinski with 19. Ben Gamel with 9. Mitchell with 5. Greg Allen, Tucupita Marcano, and Jake Marisnik with 2. Bly Madris with 1. And then Anthony Alford, G1 Bay, Kanan Smith and Jigba, Travis Swaggerty, and Cole Tucker also got some shots out there in the outfield as well. So the Pirates had no shortage of names coming through the system to be up here. I mean, you got Travis Swaggerty for a little bit. Kanan Smith and Jigba, of course, was injured early on in the year, which kind of hindered his success in 2022 and was very unfortunate for him. Anthony Alford, of course, started the year here, and you knew he wasn't going to finish the year here. G1 Bay, kind of still jumping around. We'll see what the Pirates decide to do with G1 Bay, but I do think the outfield is the right move for him with the middle infield being so flooded with talent like it is right now. Obviously, Cole Tucker no longer here. Jake Marisnik no longer here. Bly Madris no longer here. Greg Allen no longer here. So then that leaves you Tucupita Marcano, Cal Mitchell, Ben Gamel, Jack Sawinski, and Bryan Reynolds, which not the most vaunted group that you could ask for by any stretch of the imagination whatsoever. But for the Pirates, I think you could solidify the fact that as long as Reynolds is still here, barring a trade or anything, he is the center fielder. Jack Sawinski will more than likely play that left field spot. So then you're really figuring out the right field spot. And the thing with Jack Sawinski a little bit, and we're going to pull up his percentiles here from Statcast. When the guy got his bat on the ball, he was very good. Of course, San Diego Padres product, 15th round pick in 2016. He was picked up in the Joe Musgrove trade. Came up here and he was playing well. He was hitting the home run ball very well. Some issues here though. The average exit velocity, 38th percentile, but his max exit velocity is an 85. 52% hard hit rate and a 47x slugging rate. His biggest issue, and we all know this, is that when he does get his bat on the ball, it's going to go somewhere. That's how that works with him. He was very good at not chasing outside of the zone, 75th percentile. He was very good on base on balls percentage, but his K percentage was in the 6th percentile. Big reason why he was sent down earlier in the year was because of the fact that he was striking out at a very high premium, and it was not good. But outs above average, 72nd percentile. You take that kind of stuff from a guy like Jack Sawinski, who I think a lot of people did forget, of course, that he was a rookie, obviously. And Sawinski, barring his issues, still brought something to the Pirates that they haven't had in a while, which was a quality home run bat. Then, of course, O'Neill Cruz comes up, and then Bryan Reynolds has his home run year. But adding Sawinski to that mold, when you look at this team, taking off the filter that I have off here for outfielders, and you look at all positions on this team, if Jack Sawinski stays up all year, and O'Neill Cruz would have been up here all year, and maybe even throw Rodolfo Castro in there as an all year guy, you're talking about 3 to 4 guys on this team that would have hit 20 home runs. Diego Castillo even helped with 11. He might have been able to get to that number. But you could confidently say that Bryan Reynolds and Jack Sawinski and O'Neill Cruz would definitely get to that number. What Jack Sawinski needs to improve on, obviously, is the strikeout numbers. That's the biggest thing, and his whiff rate. He just has to. It's something he's going to have to do. Now, is this just the kind of player that he is? Sure, that's very possible. But where do you go outside of Jack Sawinski and Bryan Reynolds? Well, we're going to get into that in just a little bit, but I want to let you guys know about the wonderful people over at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for betting football and the start of the new basketball season. Find all of the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all of your sports wagering information with live betting and up to the minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action happening today. And BetOnline, of course, is where the game starts. If you bet on the Steelers yesterday, I'm sorry. Yeah, my birthday, and they didn't pull out even the spread on that one. The Pittsburgh Penguins are in action tomorrow night, actually on ESPN, so you can go bet on that game as well. So there's plenty of stuff to bet on right now. You have football, basketball, the World Series right now. Game three, of course, is tonight with that series tied 1-1 between the Houston Astros and the Philadelphia Phillies as it shifts to Citizens Bank Park. But this Pirates team, again, talking about the outfield, I have seen people say that one of the things they would like to see the Pirates do in the offseason is go out and get that third outfielder now and then give some of these other guys a shot down the line. I don't have an issue with that for the most part. It's more or less that as we have went through this year, the Pittsburgh Pirates already have so many guys that they have to get looks on still. And we're going to go spot track real quick and give you an idea of who the free agents are going to be in the outfield, just to kind of even talk about that before we get into the internal options. But you're talking about Aaron Judge. Obviously, that's a no for the Pittsburgh Pirates. You then look at Michael Brantley, Will Myers, who has a club option, which will likely be declined at $20 million. AJ Pollock at a player option that he will likely opt into at $13 million. Joey Gallo is going to be a free agent with a market value of $8.9 million. Then you're looking at Adam Duvall, Kevin Kiermaier, who's on a club option, Andrew Benintendi, Mitch Haniger, Tommy Pham, who's on a mutual option, David Peralta, Jurickson Profar, who's on a player option that he'll likely opt into, Brandon Nimmo, who's going to be one of the top free agents in all of baseball, and it looks like the Rockies are going to throw a lot at him. Jock Peterson is another guy that's going to be a free agent. Cole Calhoun, Robbie Grossman, Corey Dickerson, Tyler Naquin, Chad Pinder, Kevin Biar. Of course, Greg Allen and Ben Gamble are going to be free agents in that outfield. So no lack thereof of options there. But as a Pirates fan, you have to ask yourself, do you want to go sign a guy like Will Myers or Kevin Kiermaier or something like that to not get looks on the young players that you have in the system that you still need to get looks on? And you're talking about a guy like Travis Swaggerty, who did not get that much of a look this year for some reason. He just did not. You're also still talking about guys like Kanan Smith and Jigba, who, again, unfortunately had the injury early on in the year that hindered him and stopped him from even getting to anywhere remotely to prove anything. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second. You're then still looking at the fact that you have Cal Mitchell there as well. Tuca Peter Marcano might have the slot out there. G1 Bay is another guy that they have. So they have a lot of options. And then on top of those options, you're looking at guys that are going to probably come up through the system this year, like Connor Scott, who I think has a big chance to do so. You're looking at a guy like Matt Frazier. You're looking at a guy like Matt Gorski, potentially, who is a Pirates outfielder in the system. And the Pirates, again, this is a great issue to have in the sense of the Pirates need quantity over quality at this point right now. Now, of course, you're going to be looking for the quality at some point, but you also, again, you look at where this team is in terms of the outfielding prospects that they have, and I could see it from both sides because you have Endy Rodriguez, who is arguably the best prospect in the Pirates system this year. I actually don't even think there's an argument on that. The guy was just absolutely nuts. He does have an ETA of 2024 via MLB.com prospects, but I do think that's a little outdated just because I think and he did enough that he could definitely be up here in 2023. You're then looking at guys, like I said, G1 Bay, who's already up here, the number 11th ranked prospect. Lonnie White Jr. is a pretty far away person right now in the outfield. You're then looking at Matt Frazier, who I mentioned earlier at 24. He's another left-handed bat, I believe. So we'll see how, yeah, he bats left-handed. So we'll see how that affects things. Travis Swaggerty, who we got to look at, just a small look at, is still also here. You're then looking at Matt Gorski, who I mentioned earlier, 6'4", 198, AAA guy, right-handed hitter. He's the 22nd ranked prospect in the Pirates system. And this year for 4 different teams, he batted 280, 358, 598, and 956 over the course of 81 games. Of course, most of that success came in Greensboro when he was batting 294, 377, 754 with an over 1,000 OPS. He had, of course, a very good year in Greensboro in terms of the home run ball as well. 17 home runs, 37 RBIs to 17 walks. There's a chance that Matt Gorski could end up being a very important player to this ball club because of the fact that they need a right-handed power bat. They just really do. Bryan Reynolds is a switch hitter, so he does, of course, do that for you. Key Brian Hayes has a little bit of that thing going on. Rodolfo Castro, as well as a switch hitter. But when you look at the lineup, especially the outfield, Jack Sawinski's a lefty. Cal Mitchell's a lefty. G1 Bay is a lefty. Canaan Smith and Jigba is a lefty. You then talk about Matt Frazier, who's a lefty. Travis Swaggerty is a lefty. So I think Matt Gorski will actually probably have one of the better chances of coming up pretty quickly, mainly because of the fact that he's one of those guys that it bats from the right side of the plate, brings you a power element, and that's something that the Pirates have been looking for. You keep going, then you have Shaylin Polanco, who's one of my favorite prospects in all of the Pirate system, but you're not going to see him for a very long time. Hudson Head, who was also picked up in the Joe Musgrove trade. He's still maybe about a year or two away. Candace Smith the Jigba, who we got to look at this year in a short stint, of course, will get a chance next year. And then Rodolfo Nolasco, who again is also another guy that I think is about a year or two away. So that begs the question of more than likely what the Pirates are going to have at their disposal next year at any point. You're going to probably have, well, you're going to definitely have Bryan Reynolds, Jack Sawinski, and I'd say Cal Mitchell and Canaan Smith and Jigba in the fold in the outfield. Maybe you flirt with the idea of throwing O'Neal Cruz out there. I don't really agree with that too much, but maybe you do. I think they should just keep him at shortstop for now. At the end of the day, if they do decide to go externally here, because I like Ben Gamel a lot, but I don't think Ben Gamel is going to fix too many problems here for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And I think that also with him being a free agent, there will probably be mutual interest. But it's also the fact that if you're going to get a guy like that, you need to make sure that Ben Gamel knows his role if he comes back. I do not want to see the Pirates starting Bryan Reynolds, Sawinski, and Gamel to start the year next year. They need to be starting Sawinski or alongside Reynolds. They need to be starting one of Sawinski, Cal Mitchell, or Canaan Smith and Jigba, with those two being in the corner spots. Maybe G1 Bay again slides out there in one of those spots. Maybe you see Tucupita Marcano get back to the form he had earlier in the year and do that. That's more of why I say I don't think the Pirates should go external. I wouldn't be mad about it if they do get a guy like a Will Myers or a Jurickson Profar or one of those guys that can bring you quality defense and some good at bats from the outfield and be a consistent guy there for you. I just don't know if the Pirates are, one, going to be willing to spend that much money to do that, or two, if they're even going to be willing to do it, period, as mentioned before, with the fact that they just have so many names that they have to get a look on here. But I would say that you would know Jack Sawinski and Bryan Reynolds are probably the two constants. I think we already know what you're getting from Jack Sawinski. You already know what you're getting from Bryan Reynolds. Who joins them in the fold, I think, is just the biggest question at this point. And it's not a bad question to have, as mentioned before. And speaking of Bryan Reynolds, he is, of course, a finalist for the Gold Glove Award this year. I'm going to take this little ticker down so this will hopefully pop all the way up. Bryan Reynolds, of course, the only Pirate who is up for a Silver Slugger Award this year. And it's very well deserved. I believe he was a finalist last year for it, but He's alongside some big names: Mookie Betts, Kyle Schwarber, Juan Soto, Starling Marte, Jock Peterson, Michael Harris II, and then, of course, Bryan Reynolds, Hunter Renfroe, and Braden Nimmo. This is from MLB.com. They say Betts already has won 4 Silver Sluggers, 3 in the AL and 1 in the NL in 2020. He'd be the 13th outfielder all time to win at least 5. Soto also is a contender for his 3rd straight award, and while his numbers might not seem up to his usual lofty standards, he still posted a 401 on base percentage, a 149 OPS plus, and 27 home runs. Among a strong group of challengers are Kyle Schwarber, the NL home run leader with 46, Harris II, who's the potential NL Rookie of the Year award winner, and the Mets pair of Starling Marte and Brennan Nimmo, the latter of whom is set to be one of the top free agent outfielders available this winter. So definitely a interesting group there for Bryan Reynolds. And we take a look at his StatCast percentile rankings. And again, Bryan Reynolds did not start the year super crazy by any stretch of the imagination. He really didn't. But you look at these here, and average exit velo 73rd percentile, max exit velo 91st percentile, hard hit percentage was up in the 60s, XWOBA was up in the 60s, XBA was up in the 50s, X slugging was in the 60s, barrel rate was 50%, his K rate was 40%, which I think that'll be fixed next year when he gets a little bit more confidence. He did get on base via base on balls a lot. His whiff rate was very low. His chase rate was low. Sprint speed was very high. Outs above average was pretty high or pretty low. His outfielder jumping was kind of and his arm strength. Bryan Reynolds, I don't know if he'll win the Silver Slugger Award again, just because, I mean, you look at the group that he's facing. I think those top 3 will probably take it home: Mookie Betts, Schwarber, and Soto. But for Bryan Reynolds, it's a prestigious honor to even have that just bestowed on you. And I think that he'll use it as motivation for going into next year. And it's very cool that the Pirates decided to go that route and that the voters decided to go that route of, one, the Pirates keeping Bryan Reynolds around after last year when everybody thought he was going to be traded, and the voters giving him a chance at winning a Gold Glove. The outfield's going to be interesting, guys, and we're going to talk about it, I'm sure, a lot more here in the future. But with that said, guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of Locked On Pirates. I am, of course, your host, Ethan Smith, who does the most. On tomorrow's episode, of course, we will be joined by Gary Morgan for the first time in a couple weeks. Our schedules haven't matched up too well, but again, as I've changed my schedule, things are on the come up in terms of where this podcast is going to go and getting you guys episodes. So hopefully you're here for the ride. Also, thank you for 400 subscribers on YouTube, over 1,000 followers on both of the Twitter accounts at MVP Ethan and at Locked On Pirates on Twitter. So thank you guys so much for that as well. You guys are awesome. I appreciate everything that you do for me. I appreciate you guys tuning into this podcast and even making my birthday a fun part of this podcast now with today. So thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your Halloween. Please stay safe. Go trick-or-treating. Have fun. Stay safe. And I will see you guys on the flip side.